I'm back. Back for another update. I couldn't do a whole day without a news update. I had a dream last night. Just got to tell you that right away. I had a dream, and the dream was about Sundance and Q and the number 17. Honey, did I tell you about the number 17? I might have. I don't remember if I did.
You got to that part?
Yeah, it was an interesting dream. I saw all this information. I knew it was related to Q. I also knew it was related to Sundance, and an article I had just read that Sundance is the last refuge on conservative treehouse. I've been following Sundance's posts because I think Sundance is one of the few people who is very closely following the crumbs and following where all this palace intrigue in the intelligence community, the deep state, it's all going. Sundance is on top of this and is putting things together in a way that make it really easy for me to figure out where this is all going. And this time I took Sundance's article and I rewrote it and made bullet points so that it's easier for me to read. I sometimes have a little, Sundance is on Twitter, just at the last refuge 2, the number 2, at the last refuge 2. Sundance posts pretty regularly, has really good insights. I don't think you could have these good of insights on what's happening in the deep state without divine revelation helping you out. Sundance just knows stuff and connects the dots in a way no one else does. So there is so much to keep track of, and there's a lot of stuff that is not worth keeping track of. I'm just going to tell you. There's a lot of stuff floating around out there that is better to flush down the toilet and not pay attention to. There's just a lot of nonsense going on out there. So, Mike Rogers, by the way, my news yesterday turned out not to be fake news. I reported that Mike Rogers was going to step down from head of NSA, and it turned out to be true. He is going to step down. They are looking at a successor. I think it's Nakasone is who they're looking at first. Nakasone, Lieutenant General, I believe, is in charge of cyber terrorism. And what they want to do with NSA is split it up into NSA and cyber terrorism. And Nakasone is currently in charge of cyber terrorism. I've heard that they want to take Nakasone and make him in charge of both, which would delay the split of the NSA. And I don't know how that's going to work out, but that's just what I'm hearing. Why is Rogers leaving? That's a really good question. We don't really know. I don't know. I haven't heard any good discussions. The service that Rogers has provided over the last few years alone has been amazing. And he's got his time in. Things are changing, and probably just needs to retire, wants to get out. Look, hopefully Trump and his people will pick someone as good as Admiral Rogers for his replacement. I don't think we're going to get some deep state hooligan who wants to take down Trump and increase the illegal activity. Nakasone, who is in charge of, or whoever ends up being appointed, they're going to have to be well aware of what's been happening at the NSA. There have been a lot of things happening. And we're going to cover some of those things tonight. You're going to hear about departments of our government you've never even heard of before. Some of you. Some of you are going to hear about departments in our government you've never even knew existed and what's been going on with them. So why don't I get started? All right. So the story exposes the biggest political scandal in U.S. history, and it tells of how one man's actions likely saved the world. Saved the country, not the world. But I don't know where that came from. I was doing so well. We have to talk about SCIF. S-C-I-F. What is a SCIF? The SCIF is an acronym. It stands for Sensitive Compartmented Information Facility, a SCIF. All right. To understand the larger issues in this story, it's important to focus on what it means to have intelligence that is compartmented. Intelligence information is housed in compartments within the larger intelligence community. Each intelligence unit holds information that is unique to its own compartment. The FBI Counterintelligence Division holds intelligence information specific to their tasks and their assignment. The FBI's Criminal Division has compartmented information that is specific to them. Same with the Pentagon, the State Department, the CIA. Each agency has its own compartmented information that is not shared with other agencies. All right. The compartmented structure and the nature of our intelligence community led to the Officer of Director of National Intelligence, which was a recommendation that came after 9/11. And the Director of National Intelligence is essentially a centralized hub of intelligence information where intelligence information is shared between agencies through the Director of National Intelligence and with the President. Okay. In 2016, the Director of National Intelligence for President Obama was James Clapper. Civilian oversight of the intelligence community is done by the Intelligence Gang of Eight. They're responsible for oversight of the CIA, the NSA, and the Office of Director of National Intelligence. The Intelligence Gang of Eight is Paul Ryan, Nancy Pelosi. It's the Speaker and of the House, Senate Majority Leader, Minority Leaders, and intelligence chairs and vice chairs. So it's Ryan, Pelosi, Schumer, McConnell, Nunes, Schiff, Burr, and Feinstein. That's the Intelligence Gang of Eight. Although these people don't have security clearances per se, they can interact with intelligence agencies and the intelligence documents they produce at the highest levels. So if you are a member of the Intelligence Gang of Eight, you are responsible for oversight of these intelligence communities in theory, and you can get access to any of the intelligence products that they put out. On March 20th, 2017, during congressional testimony, James Comey was asked why he did not inform congressional oversight about the counterintelligence operation on the Trump campaign, which had begun in July of 2016. That question, under oath, totally hit Comey by surprise. He did not expect that question. Without using his name, James Comey said it was because the head of the Counterintelligence Division, Bill Priestap, told him not to advise the intelligence oversight people. All right. Oversight protocol requires the FBI director to tell congressional intelligence, the Gang of Eight, of any counterintelligence operations. They're required to report on it. In fact, this gal who asked this question said, when do you normally report on these operations? Said, well, we do quarterly reports, and then we do other reports, and if we have a counterintelligence operation, we would give information to House oversight on that. And then the gal asked, why didn't you tell congressional oversight? And he was like, because the head of counterintelligence told me not to. All right. The originating intelligence agencies in these examples is the Department of Justice National Security Division. Now I have a question for you. How many of you have heard of the Department of Justice National Security Division? Anybody? Did you even know they existed? Their counterpart in the FBI is the Counterintelligence Division. So a lot of people know that the FBI has a criminal division and a counterintelligence division, but a lot of people don't know that the Department of Justice has kind of an analogous division. It's called the National Security Division. All right? And there is some creepy stuff going on inside the National Security Division, and we're going to talk about that. In fact, you could not, if we told you who the head of the National Security Division was, you'd be like, never heard of that person. What do they do? Who are they? All right. There's a reason for that. There's a reason why they don't want you to know about that agency. No such agency. All right. All of these agencies and divisions and departments hold proprietary intelligence information in their own SCIF. They can also receive intelligence products from other divisions and departments that are created for them. They can hold that in their SCIF. But in each division or department's SCIF is only the information that is specific to their division or their department. In 2015, the Office of Inspector General, Michael Horowitz, requested oversight of the Department of Justice National Security Division. Sally Yates responded with a 58-page legal explanation, basically saying, no, we're not required to give you any of our documents or information. We are not subject to your oversight. Now, Horowitz is the Inspector General for the entire Department of Justice. But Sally Yates was essentially telling Horowitz, you can have oversight over the entire Department of Justice, but not the National Security Division. We are not going to cooperate with your investigations. All right. So, and just as a kind of a backstory, there has been a lot of heartache concerning the Office of Inspector General. The Office of Inspector General runs, essentially they're like internal affairs. There are 73 different offices of Inspector General. There is one for every federal agency. Every federal agency has an Office of Inspector General. In fact, the NSA just got their director of their Office of Inspector General approved through the Senate last week, I think. They're supposed to be accountable. They're supposed to do internal audits, internal reviews, performance. They address complaints, and they look at objectively the performance of each department. And that's what the Office of Inspector General does. And there has been a lot of controversy during the Obama administration over how much or how little oversight the Inspector General had with these different intelligence agencies, and the Department of Justice was a big one. Horowitz was always running up against obstruction of his ability to investigate. He would ask for documents, and he would not get the documents, and he would have to go to court, and he would have to go to Congress and beg and plead. They had many hearings to try to figure out if the Office of Inspector General was allowed to get access to information inside the Department of Justice and FBI. Because I suspect there is a lot of nefarious activity going on, and you don't exactly want the Inspector General poking his nose around at this stuff if you're running nefarious operations. So that's the backstory. All right. So the White House is also host to intelligence information. They have their own SCIF. It holds the intelligence products created by the White House. An example is the President's Daily Briefing. President's Daily Briefing is held in the SCIF, the White House. The President's Daily Briefing in its entirety only exists in the White House SCIF. Parts of the Daily Briefing would also be hosted in the originating agencies that contributed their part of their intelligence information to the Presidential Daily Briefing. So when the Director of National Intelligence gives the President a daily briefing, they take information from CIA, FBI, Department of Justice, Department of Defense, State Department, Homeland Security. Each of those agencies prepares a report specific to their agency. It becomes part of the presidential daily briefing. Each of those agencies has their own report. It goes in their own SCIF, but the entire report is held in the White House SCIF. That's the only place you would have access to that information. And I'm explaining this because it's important if you want to understand what's going on with all this deep state crime that's happening, and the unmasking, and the FISA court. If you understand all this stuff, it'll make it easier to comprehend where all this stuff is coming from. All right. Putting together the oversight structure with compartmented information, intelligence information, it becomes apparent that only a few people would traditionally have access to the presidential daily briefing. A few people, traditionally. Sundance has a link to an article here, and this article was written by David Priest, who is a former analyst and daily intelligence briefer for the CIA, who wrote the book, The President's Book of Secrets, The Untold Story of Intelligence Briefings to American Presidents from Kennedy to Obama. I didn't know that book was out there, but that book is out there. And Sundance links to an article by the Washington Post, and the article is called 5 Myths About the Presidential Daily Briefing. So we're going to learn a little bit about the Presidential Daily Briefing. And here's some quotes from this article. While through most of history the document has been marked for the president's eyes only, the Presidential Daily Briefing has gone only to the president. The most restricted dissemination of the Presidential Daily Briefing was in the early 1970s, when the book went only to President Nixon and Henry Kissinger, who wore a dual hat of National Security Advisor and Secretary of State. In other administrations, the circle of readers has also included the Vice President, the Secretary of Defense, and the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, along with additional White House staffers. By 2013, the Obama Presidential Daily Briefing was making its way to more than 30 recipients, including the President's top strategic communications aide and speechwriter and deputy secretaries of national security departments. So, unlike previous presidents who kept the Presidential Daily Briefing in a small circle of people, under Obama, the Presidential Daily Briefing was going to a lot of people. That's important to remember. During an MSNBC interview about her unmasking U.S. citizens within the intelligence reports, in April 2017, President Obama's National Security Advisor, Susan Rice, defined the Obama National Security Departments to include State Department, Defense Department, the Pentagon, which includes the NSA, and the CIA. Obama Deputy Assistant Secretaries of Defense had daily access to the presidential briefing. An example of one of the Obama Deputy Assistants of Secretary of Defense is Evelyn Farkas. That name again. You remember Evelyn Farkas. She's the one who went on Morning Joe, and she was rambling about why all the leaking was going on. And if they knew where we got the information from, they would close it all up and they'd get rid of it. And that's why there was all the leaking. That's Evelyn Farkas. Okay? And, all right, so I'll continue. With dozens of people having access to the President Obama's Presidential Daily Briefing, Rice's unmasking of names within the intelligence product gave dozens of people direct access to unmasked intelligence, including Obama officials who could, and likely did, use a Presidential Daily Briefing for specific and intentional political purposes. This political outcome was essentially confirmed by Farkas, who was one of the downstream recipients of the unmasked intelligence given to her by Susan Rice in the Presidential Daily Briefing. if the House Intelligence Committee or the Senate Intelligence Committee wanted to see the presidential daily briefing, they would have to request the individual components from each agency, because the presidential daily briefing product was not created for them. It was created for the president and his staff. Only the chairman and the minority leader from House or Senate Intel committees could go to the White House to see the entire presidential daily briefing. And they could get access to it. They'd have to ask for it, and they'd have to go and look at it. But all the other people in the Gang of Eight, they would all have to go and piece it all together individually. Okay, this is why Devin Nunes, who is a Gang of Eight member, had to request, why he has to request intelligence from each department, NSA, DOJ, FBI, in order to share it with the Oversight Committee, of which he is the chair. Nunes can review the executive SCIF products. Nunes, because he's the chair of the House Intel, he can go to the presidential SCIF. He can look at the presidential daily briefing. He can't share it with anyone. He can't share it with his committee. If he sees anything in the presidential daily briefing that gives him concern, he'd have to go to the agency that gave that particular information and get it from them, and get it from all of them, pull it together, and then he could share it with his committee. So this is what compartmentalization of intelligence does. It makes it very hard to get access to information. The congressional SCIF holds the compartmented information for committee members to review. The intelligence is then removed or deleted after committee members have looked at it. Sundance's research suggests that in February and March of 2017, Devin Nunes, a Gang of Eight member, reviewed intelligence reports, most likely the presidential daily briefing, that were assembled exclusively for the office of the former President Obama, and that is what he reviewed in the Eisenhower Executive Office Building SCIF. The intelligence would have been delivered to that SCIF for his review, most likely by either Director of National Intelligence Dan Coates or NSA head Mike Rogers. One of those two people probably assembled that presidential daily briefing from Obama and put it in the SCIF in the Eisenhower building, and then Nunes went there and looked at it and viewed it. That is what Sundance is kind of putting pieces together. This is kind of what it looks like. After Nunes reviewed the information, March 22nd, 2017, he held a brief press conference stating he was provided intelligence reports brought to him by unnamed sources that included significant information about President-elect Trump and his transition team. He said the information was not related to Russia or the FBI Russian counterintelligence investigation. And I'm going to give you a couple of quotes from his press conference. On numerous occasions, Obama's intelligence community incidentally collected information about U.S. citizens involved in the Trump transition, details about U.S. persons associated with the incoming administration, details with little or no apparent foreign intelligence value were widely disseminated in intelligence community reporting. Private information about Trump's transition team was widely disseminated in intelligence community reporting. Third, I have confirmed that additional names of Trump transition members were unmasked. Fourth, and finally, I want to be clear, none of this surveillance was related to Russia or the investigation of Russian activities. The House Intelligence Committee will thoroughly investigate surveillance and its subsequent dissemination to determine a few things, and here are the things I want to read off, and then he lists these things. Who was aware of it? Why was it not disclosed to Congress? Who requested and authorized the additional unmasking? Whether anyone directed the intelligence community to focus on Trump associates, and whether any laws, regulations, or procedures were violated. I've asked the director of the FBI, NSA, and CIA to expeditiously comply with my March 15th, 2017 letter that you all received a couple weeks ago and to provide a full account of these surveillance activities. It's likely that the intelligence reports were political opposition research that was part of President Obama's presidential daily briefing. So, if you can imagine this, part of the information that President Obama was getting in his presidential daily briefing was opposition research on the Trump team, and this was coming from NSA, FBI, and other intelligence agencies. The other possibility is that this information was a separate intelligence report, not part of the daily briefing. Sundance says the latter is highly doubtful because it would be too risky for the president to ask for specific standalone intelligence against a political adversary like Donald Trump. So rather than having Nunes looking at this as an independent report, we're theorizing, because we don't know for sure, that he actually saw the presidential daily briefing, and he saw all the unmasking of the names, phone numbers, information of Trump's transition team. And that was part of the presidential daily briefing. It was widely disseminated to a lot of people. Okay. Now we're going to shift gears for a second, and we're going to go to the FISA court. There was a June 2016 FISA application that was denied, and an October 2016 application that was approved. We know that for sure. The current line of congressional inquiry surrounds the FISA warrant and whether it was built upon fraudulent and manipulated content. The Steele dossier, which was presented to the FISA court. When Devin Nunes explained his concerns last March about what he saw when he reviewed the 2016 intelligence gathering, reporting, and unmasking, the issue behind his concern was clouded in mystery. No one really knew what it was that Nunes was concerned about. You could kind of guess, but you didn't know for sure. Because the larger issues at that time were appointing a special prosecutor, which was being driven by the Russia conspiracy narrative. Mike Rogers became director of the NSA in April of 2014. Sometime in early 2016, he became aware of ongoing and intentional violations of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act. Section 702 surveillance, and specifically item number 17, which includes the unauthorized upstream data collection of U.S. individuals within NSA surveillance. Now, I was reading this article by Sundance, and I was like, number 17, that's the number that was in my dream. This item number 17 in the FISA process is going to become very important. So we're going to go into a little bit of detail and explain to you what the item number 17 is. Section 702, item number 17, is called About Inquiries. It is specifically the collection of emails, phone call surveillance of U.S. persons where there is a blank space in a form and you fill it out, and the item is number 17, and you put in whatever information you want. So phone calls, phone numbers, email addresses. It gives you a searchable database, and you can pull all kinds of raw data by filling out that form. And that's called item number 17. In mid-2016, Rogers ordered the NSA compliance officer to run a full audit on 702 NSA compliance. The NSA compliance officer identified several strange 702 about queries, this is the number 17 item, that were being conducted at the time. These were violations of the Fourth Amendment, search and seizure, i.e. unlawful surveillance and gathering. Rogers was briefed by the compliance officer on October 20th of 2016. Admiral Mike Rogers ordered the About Query activity to stop. He reported the activity to the Department of Justice, and then he went to FISA court. 6 days later, on October 26th, the full FISA court assembly came together, and Rogers personally informed the court about the 702 number 17 violations. He informed them he had stopped the About inquiries permanently. Also in October, DOJ Associate Attorney General Bruce Orr met with Christopher Steele and Glenn Simpson of Fusion GPS, who created the Steele dossier. This is in October. This is while all this is going on with FISA court, where Rogers had to go there and say, look, we've got some problems. There is some illegal use of number 17. I'm shutting it down. We're doing a compliance report audit. Okay. Also, in October, DOJ lawyers formatted the FBI information, the Steele dossier, for the Trump FISA application. The head of the National Security Division, Assistant Attorney General John Carlin, would be responsible to ensure there was a valid legal basis for the FISA application. Because, and we talked about this in previous scopes, when you're going to go to FISA court and get a warrant to do surveillance on someone, you have to have someone from the FBI and the Department of Justice. They have to fill out the affidavits, put the information together. It goes to the Department of Justice. They put a cover sheet on it. It goes down to the FISA court, which is down the street from Justice Main, and they submit the application. So FBI and DOJ are both involved. Okay. Now, this is something that's worth thinking about. In all of this stuff that's going on with FISA court and surveilling Trump and his team, only a very small number of people were involved in this process. They kept the players small. It was Lisa Page, Peter Strzok, Andrew McCabe, Bruce Orr and his wife Nellie Orr. There were some other people, probably Bill Priestap, who is FBI head of counterintelligence. Small circle, people at the top. They had to make sure this operation went no further than in their own little circle. So it was all fairly high top level people who were involved in this operation. And more than likely, John Carlin, who you've probably never heard of, Carlin was the director of the Department of Justice National Security Division. It would have been his job to make sure there was a legitimate legal basis for the FISA application going to the FISA court. All right. In late October 2016, just weeks before the election, Director Carlin resigns. 2 or 3 weeks before the election. Just gone. He was one of the youngest directors of any department like that. Bye-bye. Gone. Resigns. Okay. Also in October, NSA compliance officer completes a review. He briefs Rogers of the FISA Item 17 violations, the email collections and the phone call surveillance, and then Rogers goes and informs the FISA court. There is a Washington Post article that was published in November, a month later, that said Ash Carter, Department of Defense, and James Clapper, DNI, requested that Mike Rogers be removed from his position of head of NSA in mid-October. So while all this is going on, while Rogers is trying to get the compliance issue straightened out with FISA court, while they're trying to get this, the Department of Justice and FBI are frantically working, trying to get a FISA application put together to give them a legitimate reason to surveil Trump. All this is going on. Ash Carter and Clapper are trying to get Rogers fired. All right. October of 2016 was a very busy month. It was right up before the election. So the National Security Division inside the Department of Justice was working in coordination with the FBI Counterintelligence Unit hand in hand. Peter Strzok, Lisa Page, Bruce Orr, they're working together against the clock because Rogers is doing a compliance review. And he is trying to figure out what is going on with these 702 number 17 requests. He shut it down. But it was too late. Before the review was complete, DOJ National Security Division had enough information for their unlawful FISA warrant, which worked retroactively to make the prior FBI surveillance lawful. See, the FBI had been scooping up information on the Trump transition team all summer, but they didn't have a warrant for it. You can't use this information if you don't get a warrant. They were surveilling Trump and his team all summer long. Ever since Trump got the nomination in July, they had been surveilling Trump's team, but they didn't have a warrant. This is unfortunately, I think, what has come of the FBI at the top. It has become this issue where you do what you want, you get the information you need, you use whatever tools you have, and then you go and get a warrant for it later, and to cover your butt so that if you ever have to go to court over it, you have your warrant. But you get it after the fact. You just get the information you need, you use it however you need, and then get the warrant later. And I think that is what we're going to find out was actually happening in the FBI and the Department of Justice. It's a very sloppy way to do law enforcement work, and it's the reason why these guys are going to end up in a lot of trouble. We know this to be true because under oath, when Comey was asked when did the investigation of the Trump team start, he said it was in July of 2016. Comey has already admitted that. The problem is they didn't have a warrant for any of that information until October. And that's all on public record. It's not even in question. On November 17th, Admiral Rogers travels to Trump Tower without telling his boss, Clapper. By the way, NSA director reports to Director of National Intelligence. That's his boss. Rogers, the Admiral, goes to Trump Tower. We've talked about this a lot. Rogers goes to Trump Tower 9 days after the election and likely informs President-elect Trump of the prior FBI and Department of Justice activity, that they had been surveilling him, all of his phone calls, all of his emails, their whole team, since July. This is we don't know this, but it's likely that Rogers went there to tell them, look, I got some bad news for you. You guys have been under surveillance by the FBI for a long time. Obama knows all this stuff. This place is bugged. They're picking up everything, emails, phone calls, because the Trump transition team was working out of Trump Tower. So the next day, November 18th, Trump transition team announces they're moving all their activity to Trump National Golf Course in Bedminster, New Jersey, where they interviewed and discussed the most sensitive positions they needed to fill: Department of Defense, CIA, State Department, Director of National Intelligence. Since they knew Trump Tower was being bugged, they moved the whole operation. They actually got rid of some people too. The transition team dumped some people who Rogers probably told them were not good people to have around. It appears that Clapper, among others, is up to his eyeballs in all of this, although he has denied participation in this. The FBI Counterintelligence Unit and the Department of Justice National Security Division had been using the FISA 702, item number 17, to gather surveillance without oversight. That's what this comes down to. FBI and DOJ really wanted to surveil whoever they wanted to and not be accountable to the people and to anyone for oversight. The Trump team members who were found in the FBI intercepts is what Devin Nunes likely discovered when he looked at the unmasking requests in that Eisenhower building skiff in March. That is why he's pushing so hard to get the FBI and the DOJ people under oath to get the documents. You've seen this over the last 2 weeks. Nunes went to the DOJ, Rosenstein, and threatened, if you do not give me the documents, let me interview these people, you're going to be held in contempt. I'm going to get subpoenas. I'm getting this information because I know what is going on. That is why Nunes is so pushing this issue so hard. And that is why Rosenstein and Chris Wray met with Devin Nunes a couple nights ago, and they agreed, finally, and they said Nunes will get to interview all the people and all the documents he's asked for. So, we, I think, in the coming weeks and months are going to see all of this stuff, just the dam is going to break and it's all going to come out. Because Nunes is now going to get the people under oath. He's going to get the documents. What did they use to go to FISA court to get the warrant? All this information, it's all coming out. So that is what I'm looking forward to. I'm curious. I want to see these people brought to justice. I want to see this corruption removed from DOJ and the FBI and the intelligence community. And I think we're going to see that. It's coming out. Look, if we can figure this stuff out, they know that we know. And there's no way they're going to hide this from us. There's too many people that know already. You know, and when they get under oath, they can say whatever they want. They can all plead the fifth. They can say, I don't remember. It doesn't matter. They're all gonna end up with ankle bracelets and a court date in front of a judge. You can lie all you want, but the truth is going to come out. Alrighty. Well, that is my report for tonight. I hope you found it helpful. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for sharing it with your friends. I'm going to get going. If I have any more dreams, I'll let you know. I will be continuing my research, looking at what Sundance is putting out. And I will keep you updated in future broadcasts. All right, let you go. Love you all. Take care. Have a good night. Sleep well, and I'll catch you on the next broadcast. This is Praying Medic, out.